Collectively, humans are richer than ever. However, that money is concentrated at the top. The wealth of the elite dwarfs that of the average person to a ludicrous extent. This is a well-known fact. You've all heard it before. But is it ethical? Today I want to say some things about extreme wealth and whether or not it is ethical. And I'm going to be upfront here. I don't think it is. When we look at the way our world works and the inevitable results of extreme wealth, as far as I can tell, the answer is no. And I know many people feel this way already, but some don't.
Wrong.
I don't mean for this to lean any particular way politically, though some might take it this way. I just want to examine the truth of our situation. And if you disagree, please comment, preferably after hearing me out. Help me understand where you're coming from. Let's engage with each other, not silo ourselves. I think today's discourse is too political and too divided. You know, it's okay to disagree and not hate each other. Despite what our media bubbles would have us believe, just about everybody does actually want a better world. So, how extreme are the wealth disparities? We have billionaires with private islands, private jets. We have starving families who work themselves to death for a bucket of water. Our globe totals wealth far beyond what would be needed for every human to live a comfortable life, and yet it is rife with destitution. Let's look at some breakdowns of the state of economic inequality. The world's richest 1.5% own almost half of the wealth. This chart shows the proportions using these coloured bars. Blue is the population share and orange is the wealth share. In this first column, we see this many people at the bottom own a tiny sliver of wealth, whereas this tiny clump of people at the top owns this much of the wealth. And we can see all this orange is very top heavy. And the trend is moving in the wrong direction. Over time, we're seeing more of that orange slide over to that tiny clump of people represented by the small block of blue at the top. Now let's zoom in to that top echelon. Ultra high net worth individuals, here meaning people worth more than 30 million, hold a disgustingly disproportionate share of global wealth. These wealth owners hold 6.5% of total global wealth, yet represent only a tiny fraction, 0.003% of the world population. I don't even think it's a pixel thick on the chart here. Now we've got some numbers. 40% of the adult population of the world owns $10,000 or less, while the people at the top own billions. These numbers can be difficult to comprehend. They're larger than human intuition can naturally visualize. Let's try put this into a few different perspectives. The classic one you may have heard, thinking in terms of seconds. 10,000 seconds is 3 hours. 1,000,000 seconds is 11 days. 1 billion is 32 years. Or let's think about dollar bills. Dollar bills are paper thin, but 1 billion of them stacked would reach 67 miles high. If we laid them end to end, they'd wrap around the earth nearly 4 times. Now let's try this. Imagine the luxury of spending $1,000 a day. Whew, that'd be nice. If you had $1 million, you could do that for 2.7 years, approximately 3 years. If you had $1 billion, you could do that for 2,700 years. And that's ignoring the fact that if you had $1 billion, it would be invested and it would grow by more than enough for you to spend that much every day without losing any money anyway. Now let's zoom in even further. As of 2023, the 26 richest people on Earth collectively own $2.9 trillion. That's right, trillion. Remember all those ways we just tried to comprehend how big a billion is? Well, 1 trillion is 1,000 billions. This combined wealth of just 26 people is greater than the total goods and services produced annually by most nations, more than the entirety of Brazil or Italy or Canada. Are they working that much harder? Harder than entire countries? It is often said that the businesses of the extreme wealthy create many jobs, and that's a good thing. But let's examine that. Sure, a company like Walmart employs thousands of people, but what happened as Walmart expanded throughout the world? Hundreds, if not thousands, of small shops run by regular people were forced out of business and closed up. All those small shops that Walmart replaced had employees that had to find new jobs. Just because a big company employs a lot of people doesn't mean that its existence is automatically a net positive for the total number of jobs. Another example would be Amazon. Countless smaller bookstores went completely out of business as the grand Bezos grew to global domination. And I'll bet the people employed at those local community bookshops were a lot happier than the packers in Amazon's notoriously hellish working environments. Billions are made by paying workers as little as the system will legally allow, not creating jobs, replacing fulfilling livelihoods with minimum wage drudgery. Job creation with job destruction, and the working conditions for anyone employed by a billionaire are anything but ethical. Time and time again, all across the world, wealth has played a huge part in deciding who leads our democracies. It's no secret that lobbying is one of the most influential factors in creating laws, and campaign funding is required to even have a shot at being elected. The more the merrier. What this means is that those with more wealth have more power than those who don't. The whole point of a democracy is to give all of the people an equal say. Everybody gets one vote. You, me, and the leader themselves are supposed to have the same impact on the ultimate choice. If you believe in democracy, then it is this very equality that you believe in, and this equality is directly undermined by extreme wealth. When one billionaire can fund hundreds of millions of dollars worth of political advertising and fill the pockets of any politician who'll do what they want, democracy's promise of giving every citizen an equal voice is not just eroded, it is destroyed. If democracy is ethical, then extreme wealth is not. Here's another thing about wealth. It grows. Anyone with real money does not keep it in cash, they keep it as assets, primarily things like real estate and market tracking index funds. Easy as pie, their wealth grows all on its own. When you have as much as the richest do, there's nothing else to do with it. You can't spend that much, and anyone with a basic understanding of safe investing knows how trivial it is. So they do it, and then they live off loans using their enormous wealth as collateral. These are tax-free loans that banks only offer to the super wealthy, which allow them to avoid the need to sell assets, because that would force them to pay capital gains taxes like normal people. Now, regular people can invest too. It's not uncommon for us schmoes to keep some savings in index funds, and of course it feels good when the markets continue to rise and we gain some net worth. We can't access it again without selling and incurring capital gains taxes, but the real problems are less obvious. Whenever the market goes up, even though the rich and the regulars are both invested, the gap between them widens. Let's demonstrate this with some examples. If person A has 100k invested and person B has $1 million, then the difference is 900k. Person A is 900k poorer. Now, if there's a 10% bump in the markets, person A earns 10k, person B earns 100k. Both are 10% richer, and person A might feel happy that their wealth has grown, but the difference is bigger. By 10 repeats of this, person A has 260k, while person B has 2.6 million. Now person A is $2.3 million poorer. Unfortunately, the situation gets worse. In the real world, existence costs money. Any money you spend is going to bite into your gains and cripple the compounding effect. Even accounting for lifestyle creep, the rich spend a far smaller proportion of their wealth and so benefit from far more powerful compounding. Let's rerun the numbers with some spending involved. What would happen if person A spent 8k in each iteration of our example and person B 30k? Now, after 10 iterations, person A's wealth would have grown from 100k to 131k, but person B, despite more than triple the spending, will have over $2 million still. B is spending a smaller percentage of their total wealth, so the compounding goes a lot further. And I'm sorry to say, it gets worse than even that. We cannot forget what people actually have to do to benefit from compounding. They have to invest in real-world assets. Even a savings bank account behind the scenes makes money because the bank takes yours and invests it in real assets. And when you have a large pool of assets generating value like dividends from shares or rent from property, what do you do with that value? You keep investing it. You buy more properties, you buy more shares. And all of this buying, these economically logical actions that wealthy people take, creates demand for those assets, driving the prices up. There are a finite number of these assets, so it gets more and more difficult for the working class to ever get their hands on any. When extreme wealth is present and the markets go up, the people at the bottom actually lose value. A shiny number in their bank account increases slightly, but they are now proportionately and therefore functionally poorer. Their purchasing power has diminished. Prices of all the things they need become more difficult to afford, and this is exactly what we see happening all across the globe. It is the inevitable mathematical reality of wealth inequality. And the super rich, they don't just have a milli, like in the example, they have hundreds of millions, they have billions. The compounding will make it worse and worse forever. The very existence of extremely wealthy individuals, the default outcome of wealth inequality, is for the rest of the world to become ever increasingly poor. The extreme wealthy use public infrastructure like roads, shipping networks, power grids, and the internet. Their activities are responsible for a huge amount of the usage and the cost of these services. Over the course of a lifetime, a regular working class citizen will have paid approximately a third of their potential net wealth as taxes which go towards paying for all this infrastructure. The extreme wealthy get away with paying single-digit percentage taxes on their wealth, if anything, often avoiding paying any completely by simply spending more on growing further ventures so that their net profit is negative. So a huge amount of the wealth that society creates goes straight into the pockets of these wealthy elites, and almost none of it is used to build or maintain the infrastructure that is needed to create it in the first place. Meanwhile, the scraps that the working class get are heavily taxed to cover all these costs. Is that fair? Is that ethical? We have to ask ourselves, how much distortion of information through control of popular media should wealthy individuals be allowed before it becomes unethical? Just look at how many of the biggest media publishers across the globe are owned by billionaires. In some cases, like Australia, where I'm from, a single billionaire family owns about half of the media. With a monopoly like this, they can shape the narrative for the eyes and the ears of a large portion of a country's citizens. This way they control the perspectives of many well-meaning people to maximise their influence on public policy. Public opinion matters tremendously when it comes to what changes societies can make. There's a reason why so many well-meaning people think that taxing the super rich is a bad idea. Our media have been paid to push that message for decades. And now they're being paid to push the message that immigration is the big problem. Whether you agree or disagree with immigration is an irrelevant distraction. The extreme wealthy will do whatever they can to pull the public eye away from the real problem, because the only solution loses them a bit of money. Some argue the question isn't about individual morality, but about the ethics of an economic system that enables billionaires to exist while inequality persists. In this view, the extreme wealthy are symptoms of structural injustice. This view changes nothing. Its proponents agree there's a problem. Whether you think it's the system or the individual that is unethical, or some nuanced mix of the two, which is perhaps where I would land, the point is, it is unethical. Imagine a big classroom with 100 children. It's lunchtime, and everybody's famished. Unfortunately, 10 of the children don't have any food. So it looks like, as is often the case, these poor children go hungry for the day. Of the remaining 90 kids, 89 have one sandwich each. Some of them are quite rudimentary, 2 slices of white bread, maybe some cheese. Some are a towering affair, juicy meat dripping with sauces. But the last singular child has an all-you-can-eat buffet that spans the length of the schoolyard. Plates filled with food from every corner of the globe, thousands upon thousands of extravagant dishes, more than the entire school could eat. This child is free to choose from any of these options and cherishes that freedom. The teacher reminds the class that it would be nice to share with the 10 who are starving, and a few morsels are given. A mouthful of sandwich here or there. The kid drowning in mountains of gourmet meals, however, never shares anything, and today is no exception. This child spins tall tales to the other children about why they deserve all the options, and gives the teacher a small dish in exchange for her turning a blind eye to the situation. The child will say whatever they need to say to hold on to their freedom. This classroom is outlandishly unethical to the point of absurdity. A toddler with barely the vocab to express themselves would be able to point to what was wrong here. Humans react in a visceral way when presented with situations of such obscene unfairness. Is it unethical for that child to hoard his buffet? The question doesn't even need asking. This classroom, as I'm sure you've guessed by now, is our planet. And in not too long, there'll be 20 kids without food, and then 30, and the buffet for the lucky kid will continue to grow. Wealth inequality has become so deeply ingrained within the fabric of our reality that, for many people, it has faded into the background, a natural fact of living just the way things are. We've lost sight of the unfairness, blind to the absurdity in a way that we never would be in any other domain of life. This isn't about left or right, it's about humanity. We can do better. Let's not assume that it always has to be this way. Change starts with small conversations and mindset shifts. Inequality is a growing problem, and we need to tax extreme wealth for our neighbours, for the starving, for our children. We can do better. So you might be asking, what can we do about it? Well, something like a wealth tax on any net worth above 10 million would go a long way. It wouldn't have to be a harsh tax. It could eliminate all the problems discussed in this video. It could eliminate poverty entirely. Not only that, it would allow the working citizens of the world to pay less tax on their income. The answer to this ethical problem? Tax wealth, not work. Is that going to be easy? Hell no. The rich don't want to give up a penny. They work tirelessly to maintain their loopholes and convince the public that taxing them is a bad idea. But by spreading the truth of our situation in this world, progress can be made. Like I said, we can do better. We can.